Take it away. Okay. Well, thank you all for joining us this afternoon to talk about evaluation, assessing the executive director and assessing the board. We really appreciate you joining us because these topics are two really, really important ones that are often neglected in nonprofits or given, put in the back burner, not thought about too much. Just to introduce myself, my name's Connie Carter, and I'm here with my colleague Corrine Sylvia. And together we are the principals of Sylvia Carter and Associates. We have our own consulting firm since 2005. It's almost 20 years. And we provide all kinds of consulting services for nonprofit organizations, many of which are in Chester County. And we do capital campaigns and strategic planning and board training and development program assessments and help organizations basically accomplish their missions more effectively. So it's a real pleasure to be here with us today. Because we have a small group, feel free to ask questions, either put something in the chat or just speak right up and interrupt us. It's totally fine because we would like to make this workshop as useful and specifically useful for you as possible. So don't hesitate to raise up any questions, clarification, and we will be probably periodically asking you for your input in terms of what your experiences have been. So we'd really like to hear from you as well. So just to get started, again, we're going to talk about two extremely important board duties: evaluation of the CEO and board self-evaluation. Can we go to the next slide page? And as you can see from this slide, we've highlighted them. They are two of the 7 major roles and responsibilities of a nonprofit board. And yet, as I mentioned, they're often neglected, done as an afterthought, or not even done at all. And I think part of that is because we often think that evaluation is going to be an uncomfortable, painful process. And if possible, we should avoid it at all costs. And while it's true that we all have probably experienced unskillful, hurtful, or even painful evaluation scenarios throughout our personal or professional lives, evaluation does have the potential to be a highly effective way to make sure that the governance and management of our organizations is being done well. Can we go to the next slide? So our goal today is to offer some suggestions about how to make the evaluation process of the CEO and the board a positive, learning, healthy experiences that foster growth. So we're going to start with discussing the CEO evaluation. Too often, I think boards put more effort into the CEO selection process, into hiring, than they do for evaluation and assessment activities. High-quality board and CEO relationships are built on trust, respect, active communication, and a mutual comprehensive understanding of the respective roles of each. And so to ensure optimal relationships, boards have a duty to spend equal efforts on the 4 pieces of pillars that support CEO performance. And those are selection, meaning hiring; guidance, the board giving direction; support, the board offering its assistance and support where asked for and where needed; and evaluation. And each of those 4 activities build on the other, and if done well, they will invariably lead to high quality relationships and higher organizational performance, which of course ultimately is everyone's goal, right? When CEO evaluations are a high priority for the board and are organized well, the process is going to instill confidence in the CEOs that their time and their efforts are appreciated and understood. I can't tell you how often Corrine and I have heard from executive directors, the board has no idea what I do. We hear that a lot. And when an evaluation is done well, that will help to ensure that the board does, in fact, understand what the CEO is doing. Mutual respect and trust are going to be developed. Board and CEO relationships are going to be fostered and are going to grow. And all of this is going to produce higher executive performance, better organizational performance as a result, a reduction in CEO turnover, and goodness knows we all would like to have that, and even higher job satisfaction for the CEO. So given all those positive benefits that I've just listed, let's talk about what holds us back. What are the barriers that boards face? Over the years, I have heard CEOs, and I know Corrine has too, CEOs say they rarely or never got evaluated, or if they did, it was an uncomfortable process because the person doing the evaluation was uncomfortable. One person said that the board member assigned to do the evaluation just stopped by her office, dropped the paperwork on her desk, and ran. Another had drinks in the bar with the board chair, and they spent 95% of the time chatting, and the evaluation was done as an afterthought in the parking lot as they were leaving. And at the opposite end of the spectrum, one person told me that they received an evaluation that was a 40-point grid about all the specifics in their job. And in addition, each board member had written an essay about the person's performance. And all of this data was dropped on their desk, but there was no effort at summarizing it, highlighting key points, or pointing out areas for growth. So unfortunately, although those circumstances maybe sound extreme, they aren't that unusual. So the problem is that nonprofits often don't have a policy and a procedure about CEO evaluation. They haven't thought the process through, and thus figuring it out feels like a really complicated, difficult task. The board members don't know what to do or how to do it. So if your organization hasn't developed an evaluation policy or a procedure yet, we really recommend that you do so. And if you have those tools, we would recommend that you review them and make sure that you do so every year or two to make sure that they're current. If you're developing a policy and a procedure, include in it a description of what's going to be done, who's going to do it, what tool, if any, or tools are going to be used, and what, if any, information gathering might be done before the evaluation meeting, perhaps from other staff members or consultants or other outside members. The CEO should be included in every step of this process of developing and reviewing the policy and the procedure. It needs to be a team effort. One of the fastest and easiest ways to make sure that the evaluation is going to be a positive experience is to include the CEO in designing the process and picking and working on the evaluation tool that's going to be used. Next slide, please. So successful boards review CEO goals and objectives on a routine basis throughout the year. That's part of that guidance piece, offering feedback to enable the CEO to continue to keep growing. Many organizations will provide a more informal or mid-year evaluation to enhance the performance appraisal process, especially for CEOs early in their tenure with an organization. So for example, if you have a new CEO, you might do it for the next, say, 2 or 3 years even, do a 6-month review just to touch base and talk about what's going on. Reviewing goals and objectives throughout the year, and if needed, conducting an interim evaluation will also help to ensure that no surprises are going to occur at the annual evaluation. And this is especially important if there are issues or problems arising, that they be commented on and dealt with so that you don't go to the annual evaluation and drop a bomb about, well, there's this huge problem. And the CEO's like, well, I don't know anything about it. We haven't talked about it. When the board appropriately selects, guides, and supports the CEO, it sets the table for a very effective evaluation process. A key step in this process is the board policy on expectations of the CEO and the performance appraisal we just talked about. Having the policy and an evaluation tool also demonstrates that the organization takes evaluation seriously, it maintains written records, and is in compliance with nonprofit best practices. And that's becoming more and more important these days. Next slide. So the policy is going to provide a comprehensive roadmap for the evaluation process to ensure that the board and the CEO are on the same page regarding how this is going to occur. And as I mentioned earlier, developing the policy, again, needs to be a joint endeavor with the board and the CEO. CEO evaluations should reflect the year's strategic plan goals and objectives, as well as the job description. An annual evaluation is also an excellent opportunity to review the CEO job description and make any changes that might be needed as a result of organizational changes during the year. And this is going to help you because it's going to ensure that the CEO's job description is pretty much always up to date. An evaluation process is also going to review the performance of goals the CEO, him or herself, has established for the evaluation period. And some organizations often ask the CEO to develop a set of goals for themselves that correspond to the strategic plan. The goals are presented to the board either through committees or to the full board directly for approval at the beginning of the year. And then the CEO has the opportunity to reflect back and talk about how well he or she did accomplishing or working on those goals. One challenge is that in most board CEO relationships, board members don't often have opportunities to directly observe the CEO in action, especially regarding interactions with staff. In other evaluation situations, the leader has direct surveillance of their team members, and they're in much stronger positions to be able to evaluate a person on their supervisory skills. This is simply not the case with a nonprofit board and their CEO. There are several strategies, however, that you can use if it is important for the board to assess the CEO performance when it comes to staff relationships. One approach is to do a staff survey or a 360-degree evaluation. However, like all parts of a CEO evaluation, this really has to be done carefully and very well, or unintended consequences can occur. Deciding who's going to complete that survey, who's going to participate in that, is extremely important. Typical people you might include in something like that would be the CEO's direct reports, meaning the people they directly supervise, staff leaders, a sampling maybe of middle managers if the organization is large enough, and perhaps some community leaders or even maybe some consultants the CEO has worked with during the year. Organizations can also do an annual employee satisfaction survey to gather insights into the overall culture. However, again, a confidential process has to be established to ensure candid and honest feedback, which may be hard in an organization with a very small staff. In summary, it's important to give a lot of thought before launching any kind of 360 evaluation. It can be difficult to interpret the results fairly and accurately. And one school of thought suggests that this 360 type of evaluation is better suited for growth and leadership development opportunities and not part of an annual performance assessment. Some high-performing boards also use an evaluation tool that focuses on job responsibilities and asks each board member to complete it. And then this completed tool is provided to either the executive committee or the board evaluation committee for tabulation. And the results of the summarized tabulated board survey are provided to the full board and, of course, are discussed with the CEO during the evaluation process. So that can be another way to get feedback in terms of how the board views the executive director's performance. But it's really important that this be summarized and organized so it isn't just the CEO being bombarded by pages and pages of data. And lastly, CEO self-evaluation can often be included as part of an annual performance appraisal. This provides an opportunity for the CEO to share major accomplishments for the year, as well as perspective on their own performance. And it could include a summary of achievements related to the goals and objectives defined at the beginning of the year, and a self-appraisal performance on the CEO's key accountabilities in each of the areas determined to be important by the board. The self-evaluation also gives the CEO an opportunity to share with the board an accounting of all continuing education and leadership development activities they might have engaged in over the year. And some CEOs may include an updated resume and even a bio to inform the board about other professional activities, including service on various boards and volunteering for civic activities. And then the final step is to determine who is going to review all of this evaluation material with the CEO. This could be the board chair, it could be the executive committee, or it could even be the full board, although that may be a bit intimidating and difficult to foster extensive conversation. The goal, however, is to share the evaluation results in a mutually respectful, confidential meeting with the CEO to ensure optimal communication. And needless to say, follow-up is really essential if there were any areas in the evaluation process that were identified as needing further work. Setting up a follow-up plan, a procedure for the following year is also extremely important at the end of the evaluation conversation. And now Corrine is going to discuss best practices and specifics of what a CEO evaluation comprises.
Thank you, Connie. Please, as we go through these slides, if you have questions, don't hesitate to raise the questions as we talk. As Connie mentioned, we want this to be a dialogue, and we want to make sure that you have the information that will allow you to conduct these assessments comfortably, fairly, equitably, and enjoy them even. What a thought, huh? Really? Okay, so let's talk a little bit about best practices for the CEO assessment. A best practice, as you know, is a procedure or procedures that are proven to be most effective. In the following slides, we'll identify the best practices to use and how to use them when you're assessing a chief executive or a nonprofit board of directors assessment. By using these tools, you will have replaced the challenge and fear with useful tools and guides, which will give you a much better and more successful outcome. Okay, so the first best practice is keeping the assessment fair, objective, open, and smart. And this is just underscoring some of the things that Connie has mentioned. We need for everyone involved to have clarity and agreement on the measurements. What are the goals to be used? What are the measurements to be used when we do this assessment? No surprises. Surprises are not good, not good. So to do that, it's best to use what we call SMART goals. And those goals are specific, they are measurable, the goals are achievable, they are realistic, and they are timely. And in the next slide, I'll talk a little more about how to achieve those SMART goals and how to use them. The next best practice has to do with how evaluation affects and impacts compensation. You know, sometimes budgets are down, and the CEO may be one of the hardest working people in the organization. But because the budgets are down, and despite the fact that the CEO may have received a sterling assessment, there simply is no room in the budget to give the CEO an increase, a salary increase that year. And that's unfortunately the way things work sometimes in a nonprofit organization. It's just a fact of life, which is unlike big corporations that often pay CEOs who have not done well a huge pay increase for their bad performance, not to be confused. The third evaluation, the third evaluation has to do with the process, including feedback from the CEO. We're going to take a look in this PowerPoint at what the CEO self-evaluation template looks like. And in it, you will see that the self-evaluation reviews goals that are set previously in the strategic plan. And this is something that Connie has mentioned earlier, and we're going to talk a little bit more about that. The CEO self-evaluation should reflect on the progress made towards those strategic planning goals, not on feelings of a board member or a single encounter that may not have gone well, or personal feelings. This needs to be a very transparent, user-friendly, supportive, well thought out, agreed upon format and document. The CEO and the board together should discuss personal performance and growth plans. Question? Okay, next slide, please. So, what is it that is included in the CEO assessment? Well, there are qualitative and quantitative metrics that we use. The quantitative metrics have to do with program service and growth. How many constituents were served? How well were they performed? Did program services grow? Did they decrease? Was there any new program development involved? Again, this refers back to what the strategic plan goals outlined within the time frame that the CEO is being assessed. Now, having said that, I want to just kind of step back for a minute and say that when Connie and I put together a strategic plan, we also include the point person or point committee or the person who is in charge of making sure that that goal is achieved in a timely fashion. Also included is a timeline. And the timeline is important. It's not something that can't be changed. It is a guide to inform the strategic planning process and implementation so that you know whether or not you're on track. And if you need more time, you can simply expand the time on your strategic plan timeline. But it's going to hold you accountable to that new timeline that you have established. And this is an important point to make because we often see strategic plans that have a very vague timeline for accomplishing goals or no timeline at all, which makes it even harder to use your strategic plan wisely and strategically to inform the assessment process for both the CEO and the board. Does that make sense? Any questions on that? Okay. The CEO assessment will also take a look at the fiscal responsibility. Did we adhere to the budget? Did we meet the financial goals? Did the budget income look at dollars raised, donors retained, and new donors cultivated? Because that's part of the income stream that comes into your organization. The qualitative metrics should include leadership. Does the CEO inspire board and staff? Take a look at the staff turnover. If you haven't done a 360 or a full survey, take a look at the staff turnover. Has there been a lot of turnover in the last year? And then you might, if there has been, then you might inquire as to the exit interview summaries. There may be some information about the culture of the organization that you as a board member need to understand in order to address or correct as needed. Relationship building. Does the CEO build relationships with constituents? Does the CEO build trust with board and staff? And does the CEO demonstrate problem-solving and decision-making skills? These are all really important qualitative things to take a look at. Remember, the single biggest way that we can impact an organization is to focus on the leadership development within the organization. And when we do that, there's no limit to how much we can raise the potential of the good people that we have recruited and raise them up as leaders and continually develop them. This is why this is so important. Next slide, please. So let's take a look at the CEO assessment. And I want to take a look at the time. Okay, I'm going to kind of run through this quickly. But I do want to say before I even begin going through that the Chester County Community Foundation will make these make this assessment available to nonprofit organizations for your use. And the way in which you can access that information, you will see on this slide, the upper left hand, as I'm looking at it, in the orange and blue information. Hugh, is there anything that you want to add to that?
The only thing I'll add is this is our template of a self-assessment, and we are happy to get our staff involved to help to customize this to your nonprofit. So, we have folks on staff who have been doing these self-assessments for years. So either reach out to me, or when you click on this link and you get to the Get On Board resources, my contact information is in there on the webpage. So you can either access this evaluation. Any customization you need, just reach out to me and I'll get that set up.
Not at all.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Hugh. This is a gift, really. I encourage you to take advantage of this opportunity. There are not many foundations out there that offer this kind of supportive material for nonprofit infrastructure. Okay. So as you can see from this self-assessment, the first issue that is addressed is the leadership and management. And there are a number of questions that are raised about program development, customer service, administration, and so forth. And then the second item that you encounter are questions about the initiatives and goals. And these, again, are directly related to the strategic plan. The initiatives and goals that are being looked at have to do with program goal 1, straight from the strategic plan, goal 2, 3, and 4. Again, straight from the strategic plan. So a lot of the homework has been done already by going back to the strategic plan and finding out what it is that we said we were going to do within that time frame and how well did the CEO do it. And there will also be some similar questions when we address the board assessment survey as well. And then the third item has to do with the CEO's last appraisal. And what is the sense of progress that has been made in the last year? Again, I would remind you that this can be customized to meet the needs of your organization. So do take advantage of this opportunity. Next slide, please. Before I run on to this next slide, what I would say is this. In addition to what the assessment includes, Connie has researched some information that she's shared with me that is really important. Here are some of the additional questions you might want to ask in a CEO assessment. What were your achievements and struggles in the past year? What lessons did you learn this past year? How has the organization moved forward in the past year? How are your relationships with the full board and the executive committee? Do you and the board balance your responsibilities with the board providing leadership and you, the CEO, providing management of the organization? And these are two separate functions. The board provides leadership, the CEO provides the management of those goals. And does the board support you? How might the board do a better job in supporting you? Is your compensation fair and reasonable? And the last question, which Connie and I always ask, is what haven't we asked you that you would like us to know? So those are some additional things for you to think about. Now, how does strategic planning relate to the CEO and board assessment? We've talked a lot about that, and we're going to talk a little bit more. The strategic plan is a roadmap of your nonprofit's goals, directions, and aspirations. Within the strategic plan, there are elements which one uses to measure the performance of an organization and its leadership. And as such, the strategic plan includes the goals, objectives, strategies, timelines, and budgets, as we've said before, which are all of the pieces that you can use in a CEO assessment. Before those goals are established, however, the strategic plan makes one more step, and that is to look at the external and internal realities of your organization so that you understand what are some of the challenges that you're going to be facing within the next year of this plan, and how might the goals be informed by those challenges and opportunities, and take advantage of those challenges and opportunities in a way that makes the goals realistic, achievable, accessible. Because the goal clearly is to anticipate and respond to change and be able to focus on achievable priorities that are going to impact and ultimately advance the mission. Now, I'm going to turn this over to Connie, who will talk a little bit about the reasons for conducting a board assessment.
Thanks, Corrine. So, the same concepts that we have talked about regarding CEO assessment and evaluation equally apply to board self-evaluations. Boards need to take time to step back, reflect thoughtfully on how they operate, and consider how effectively they are providing governance and oversight for the nonprofit. Often we get so busy and so focused on the work at hand that we neglect the importance of this time for annual self-assessment and the opportunities that the assessment experience itself can provide. So why is this so important? It is because in order to function well, nonprofit organizations need high-performing, committed boards that are dedicated to furthering the organization's mission. And a board self-evaluation is one essential tool that will help ensure that that situation occurs and recurs repeatedly. A board self-assessment can provide important information regarding a number of issues pertaining to the functioning of the board, such as how engaged and informed board members are regarding the nonprofit's work, how connected do they feel to the work, how deeply do they understand it, how passionately are they committed to it, how much do they care about it, and how well they understand their roles and responsibilities. The evaluation also, very importantly, can identify training needs or any changes that might need to occur in how the board operates. It can also highlight any problems with the board culture, such as a lack of mutual respect and tolerance, problematic behaviors, board members arriving late, cell phone use, all those kinds of annoying things that tend to happen now and then, or any other issues that people may be reluctant to bring up in person in a meeting. The evaluation tool can help bring that out in a very just factual, organized fashion, which will make it easier to absorb and evaluate the information being provided. What holds boards back from conducting an evaluation? Basically, I think it's the same issue as with CEO evaluations. Often nonprofits don't have a policy about board self-evaluation. They haven't thought the process through, and thus figuring it out feels like a very complicated, difficult task. Board members don't know what to do or how to do it. And again, as in CEO evaluations, developing an effective policy and an effective tool will help to ensure that self-evaluation becomes a useful, engaging process that sparks new growth and helpful solutions to old problems. And as Corrine and Hugh mentioned, happily, the Community Foundation has provided a tool for board self-evaluation as well on their website, and they are happy to customize this for you to make your job even easier. Generally, it's the responsibility of the governance committee to develop or select the tool, perhaps to work with you on customizing the tool on the website, ensure that the evaluation experience occurs either annually or perhaps every other year, compile the results, and then review them. Lacking the governance committee, this can be done by the executive committee. Excuse me. Similar to the CEO evaluation, if issues are identified through this assessment, the next crucial step is for the board to take responsibility and address the problems. Clearly, the assessment is going to be of little or no value if the follow-up isn't done. And now Corrine's going to talk about some of the specifics of the items that are generally included in a board self-assessment.
Thank you, Connie. Board self-assessment is really important. There are many boards of directors out there who are well-meaning, but are not aware or skilled or have been taught what it is that they are supposed to do, what their jobs are. And many boards are not strategically recruited to actually meet the needs of the organization. So board self-assessment is a very important tool to be able to raise some of those issues in a non-confrontive way that allows a board to understand, hey, we need a little more information. We need more resources having to do with marketing, or we need more resources that have to do with development, or we need more resources for whatever the issues are. And in doing that kind of research and using that information in a way that informs the board as to what it is they need to be doing is really helpful and non-confrontive. It's a very constructive way to approach this dilemma, which exists in many, many boards. It's not unusual. Okay, so there are individual board responsibilities, and then there are full board responsibilities. And I'm going to talk about both. First, I'm going to talk about the individual board member responsibilities. And they include the level of that board member's engagement. Are they truly engaged in the organization? Are they aware of the nuances of the work that's being done? Are they aware of the nuances of issues that need to be addressed, the work and so forth? So level of individual board members' engagement. And as you will see from the self-assessment, there will be an opportunity for the board member to do that. Is the board member a good steward of the organization's finances and mission, which is one of their primary responsibilities? Does the individual commit to training, education, and mentorship of other board members? This is an opportunity that is often lost because board members who have been in service to an organization over a period of time have a deeper understanding of what some of the challenges are in becoming a board member, what some of the things are that you need to know to work well within this new organization that you have joined. And so that kind of mentorship from a seasoned board member with a new or a younger board member is really, it's terribly important to help get people up to speed more quickly. And most important, does the individual board member make a personal contribution that is meaningful for them? The reason this is important is because when a donor makes a decision about what organization they wish to invest in, they take a look at the board leadership, and they take a look at whether or not there is 100% support from the board. So the issue there is, if a donor looks at that and sees that not the full board is supporting an organization, that's like a member of the family not supporting a member of the family. And the message to the donor is, this may not be the most cohesive, the most well-operated organization to which I want to make a donation. You see, board members, the thing that makes board members so powerful in fundraising is that they are a peer to a donor. A board member gives their talent, their treasury, their time to an organization. So that uniquely positions them as someone who is a strong member of the inside team, a strong member of the board. And that puts them as a peer to another peer when they ask for money. It's not Connie Carter or Corrine Sylvia or the executive director asking for money because we're paid for the work that we do. This is a volunteer who's volunteered time and talent, and they're asking another donor to volunteer their talent and their treasury as well. Very powerful. Okay, let's talk a little bit about the full board member responsibilities. And those include, has the board effectively participated in meetings and work groups to advance the mission of the organization? Has the board created a diverse and effective board? And the diversity of a board is more and more called into question by funders these days. So this is something that you want to pay close attention to and make sure that your board reflects the diversity of the community in which you're performing the mission. Has your board participated fully in strategic planning, oversight of financial matters, and fundraising? Does your board require 100% participation in making a meaningful gift to the organization? It's important to remember that board leads by example. Donors look at the board leadership as one of the indices when they decide which organization they're going to wisely invest their funds in. Organizations that are mission-driven and that demonstrate impact on a life or the community, however your mission defines that, are the ones that donors are more likely to support because they're making an investment and they're looking for a return on that investment, which has changed over the years in philanthropy. Donors are now much more investment savvy in terms of their philanthropic goals. So we in the nonprofit sector need to be aware of that, and we need to be suited up for that. So let's look at the survey. Next, yes, was there a question? Okay, let's look at the next slide. Thank you. Okay, we're going to zip through this a bit. This is the board self-assessment survey. Now, the first pieces you will notice in the introductory session have to do with gathering some information on the individual board member. You know, how long have they been involved? What communities did they serve on, etc. Then it goes into the board self-assessment, and the questions there have to do with does the board understand the mission and core program services, and are there adequate opportunities for to know your fellow board members? Do you help board and committee meetings to steer clear of non-governance issues in board meetings? This is really important because that's a tremendous time drain on board meetings. And oftentimes we find that board members tend to want to rotate off a board or want to leave a board because they don't feel that their time is being used wisely. And one of the reasons is because time is spent on issues that really the board does not need to be concerned with. Which leads to the next question. Have you found your service as a board member to be interesting and rewarding so far? And then, of course, it asks about the donating to the annual campaign. Then it goes on, then the assessment goes on to raise questions about how well the board understands the following topics. The strategic plan. Do they understand what's in the strategic plan and what they're responsible for? Does the board understand that their job is to be ambassadors, which is to open doors to people that they know, to introduce this organization and its mission and encourage their friends and acquaintances to get to know the organization and to become involved? Really crucial is the next one. Do board members understand the finances and investments of the nonprofit, and can they make informed decisions? Does the board understand what the core programs are of the nonprofit, and can they articulate those to people whom they are trying to encourage and invite into the nonprofit board community? And is effective designed, the word effective is defined as successful in producing a desired or intended result? And then this survey asks, do you agree with that or not? Very important information to have. Individually, I am an effective board member, and the next 3 items or 4 items ask about committee work, board as a whole, nonprofit as a whole. And then the last 3 questions sort of ask for individual responses from a board member about how they could better support the executive director or the CEO, what could be done to make their service more rewarding, and also asking them to identify themselves, which some do and some do not. Again, this self-assessment board survey can be customized for the needs of your nonprofit. And Connie and I encourage you to go forward and take advantage of that. Next slide, please. Okay, so these are some of the issues and that we've talked about today. Assessment areas should be designed based on the job description for the CEO and for the board according to the strategic plan. Any questions or any feedback you might have on that particular point? Moving on. The assessment needs to be completed by enough respondents so that the results are meaningful. And oftentimes it's really hard to catch a full board, but 80% of a board response to a survey is considered acceptable, okay? And that's true on both the CEO assessment as well as the board assessment. Assessment feedback should summarize the responses to the questions and highlight key areas of strength and key areas for development, refinement, and focus. This gives the next CEO year assessment a leg up on issues that need to be looked at, asked about, and addressed. And then finally, the well-orchestrated assessments foster incremental growth in an organization. And over time, with these best practices and these tools that we have talked about today, your organization will grow and the organization will develop a tremendously strong infrastructure and a reputation for being a well-run organization. And that's truly the aim of all of this work, so that you can fulfill your mission and you can raise the funds necessary to support the fulfillment of that mission. Any questions on that? Okay, I could go into my baton twirl right now, but I don't think it's really germane here. So I guess I will turn it back to Connie, if you have anything else you'd like to add.
Sure. Paige, maybe you could take the PowerPoint down so we could just see the participants again for the last couple minutes. Cool, great. Yeah, I just wanted to emphasize, please feel free to put on your cameras and to turn up your sound and whatever. Just wanted to emphasize that last point, that all of these evaluation tools and processes and all are only as good as if they are implemented. So in other words, it's so important to look at the result of the evaluation and then look at how do we want to change? Is change necessary? What are the steps we need to put in place to foster this growth? What needs to happen? And that you incorporate it, as Corrine just said, into the next year evaluation. So you could even, as a board, look back and say, hey, last year we identified these 6 areas as needing improvement. How have we done with those? Are we better? Is it worse? Are they okay? Do we need to continue them? Sort of the way you look at a strategic plan and you say, all right, what are the things that remain undone from the previous plan? Do we want to carry them over or do we want to let them go? It's the same thing with evaluation. So just to underscore the importance of follow through and then using the information that you've gleaned from the evaluation to make your organization more effective. Any questions or comments anybody has? Yeah, Linda.
Thank you, Connie and Corrine. That was a very informational presentation. So 2 things. Are we going to get this recording or not? Like, are we getting this presentation?
Paige?
Yes, so all the registrants will get an email. It'll be sent out by the end of the day today. And then in that email will be like a list of different links. So both board assessment and the CEO assessment will be in there. And then a link to the Get On Board, I believe, workshops page, which will have a direct link to this video on there.
Thank you. And then the second one is I volunteer for this very small nonprofit, Casa Guanajuato, and we do not have any paid staff. All of us are volunteer. And so I'm on the board, on the committee, I'm the secretary. And as you were talking about the assessment to CEOs, I'm thinking, is this something that we should do to our president since we don't have a CEO?
Well, I would say if the president is performing the tasks that a CEO would typically perform, then maybe you would do some form of an evaluation. In other words, if they're running programs, if they're managing the finances, if they're doing either supervising other volunteers who are doing social media or doing other aspects, if they're doing fundraising, those are typical CEO type jobs. If they're doing those roles, then I would suggest you probably would, but it might be a little different than a paid CEO position. Corrine, what do you think?
I agree. What I would do is to take the survey or take the assessment that the foundation has put together, and I would pare it down. Take the things out of that assessment that you think are going to work for you, and add whatever questions you want to add that are really focused on the work that your organization does at the place at which your organization is. I mean, lots of times these assessments are used by organizations who have paid staff and who have more of an infrastructure. But I think Connie's right. It's well to use some of these questions in a self-evaluation, even for a small nonprofit that is at the very beginning stages of its growth, because it will help you establish good, responsible results going forward, and a good culture within your organization as well. Yeah. The other thing too is, and I'm sure Connie would agree with me, if you have questions beyond today, you have our website. You can always send us an email if you have specific questions that you want to talk about. We're happy to talk with you offline and answer any of the questions that you have. Mm-hmm. So feel free to take advantage of that.
Are there any other questions about anything we talked about today? Does anybody have either an anecdote about either a good assessment, either self-assessment as a board member or an assessment as an employee, or a bad one that you'd like to share that could be educational for people?
This is a safe space.
That's right.
No one to talk about what happened.
No, you're all pretty neutral, huh? Either it wasn't done or it was okay.
I had one when I was working for a large nonprofit that should have known better, that was so intensely personal and came out of, I don't even know where some of those questions came out of. And it was a tool to move me into another position, I thought. So I just resigned. But yeah, it happens. It happens a lot. Mm-hmm.
I worked for one organization where part of their policy was that this was for staff evaluations, the person being evaluated could choose to have another member of the organization present sort of as a buddy if they wanted to, which was very interesting. So if you felt you wanted an ally or a friend, you had to be part of the organization. You had to be an employee or a volunteer or whatever at the organization. You could do that.
How did that work,
And
Connie? Was it successful?
I think it worked well. I can't remember when I was evaluated. I don't think I chose to have someone, but I know I was chosen by someone else to be there and to be sort of like their little advocate or be, you know, a comfort or I don't know what. But and I think it worked well. Yeah.
Well, you can be
So
very comforting, so
that
yeah,
could be,
I can see.
I mean, that could just be a way of reducing the pressure and the, oh, this is going to be horrible, because that's, as you could tell, that was sort of our mission from today is like, let's make this as positive and learning focused as we can.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. All right. Well, if there's nothing else, thank you guys so much for joining. Appreciate it very much, and go out and do great evaluations. And Hugh, I hope you hear from everybody wanting to use those tools, and please
Yeah.
share the information with your colleagues as well, that this stuff is on the website and available.